LaPidus.
Tyler Hopewell.
Mebrahtu, Kasa.
Henningsen.
For our experiment, we're doing a determination of the presence of antibiotics and anti-inflammatories in wastewater, milk, beef, and honey using HPLC. As I'm sure most of us know, the presence of antibiotics and many anti-inflammatories are kind of common practice in terms of livestock and many things that we consume today. So that was really something that we were really interested in exploring. So we plan to test for the presence of amoxicillin, triclosan, ibuprofen, and aspirin in wastewater, milk, beef, and honey using high-performance liquid chromatography. The amount of drugs present in the beef, milk, and honey will be very low, so a special pre-treatment method is necessary. We also plan to test milk and make sure that the instrumentation functions properly before moving on to the other foods. We will then test wastewater if the drug levels are not detectable in the milk sample. The wastewater sample will take the place of the meat and honey samples, provided if those are so small, so minuscule.
So our samples would be like amoxicillin, ibuprofen, and aspirin will be obtained from the repan drug, and we have already ordered the triclosan, which is used as the disinfectant. And we will also try some sample of water before and after they have been treated by the plant. So the wastewater will be obtained from the repan treatment plant. And the beef and honey will be obtained from the grocery store. We also plan to test the milk before and after it has been treated. So we plan to test the milk from frozen dairy before processing, and we'll buy a container of milk from the store.
And this weekend I was on the phone with Frozen Dairy about getting milk before and after treatment, which is a little bit difficult because they're worried about things like eco-terrorism. But I have to call them back later today, and they said that they might be able to get us the sample before it's been treated. But moving on to how we're going to test everything, the first thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to take our drug samples and create standard stock solutions. What we're planning to do is have those standard stock solutions be about 1 milligram per 1 milliliter in water. Then these, since they have antibiotics, they have to be stored in the cold room, which is hopefully going to be around 4 degrees Celsius to keep anything growing in there or anything like that. For the milk, it's going to be a fairly intensive procedure because if you think about the 5 microliter tube on the HPLC, you can't just inject milk, pure milk or diluted milk because of the long chains of fatty acids, lipids, things like that in the milk. So what we're going to do is centrifuge it a bunch of times using different acids and things like that to break up all those long chains. We are also going to have to use solid phase extraction as well as using a rotovac to dissolve all the organic materials that we used to break up all the chains in the milk. Once we do that, we're going to dilute to different levels and test that. However, we're also going to have to do something known as spiking the sample, which means we're going to take the sample of milk and spike it with different levels of the antibiotics and anti-inflammatories to make sure our recoveries and variations of each analyte are correct. So to do that, you take a standard solution containing a very, very small amount of each of the drugs and spike the milk samples at levels of 5, 10, and 20 nanograms per milliliter. And that just ensures that you're testing everything is correct, because once you spike it, if there's a peak, it will go up. For the beef, we're actually going to use a fairly similar procedure, except first we have to liquefy it. And for centrifuging, we're going to need to centrifuge it in a larger amount, but there's a larger centrifuge in the biology department.
As far as testing the honey, assuming we get to that point, it'll kind of be prepared as per the procedure described by Lopez et al. And essentially that was set up for a liquid chromatography tandem mass spectrometry, which we do not have access to, but we should still be able to do it with what we have and get fairly decent results, assuming we have enough of the, or there's enough of the analyte in the sample for us to detect. And basically that's going to be another centrifuging process to try to get out anything that we don't want in there that would kind of clog up the works. and then we'll put it through solid phase extraction and get rid of the organic solvent, and finally it should be able to just go through the HPLC, and again, assuming we have high enough levels of the analyte, we should be able to get a pretty good number from that. And if we don't, we may be able to increase the concentration to try to get a detectable level, and we'll also be putting that through the whole spiking procedure that she was describing earlier, where we're putting in known amounts of the analytes to see if we can recover that and make sure that our methods for doing that are actually getting all of the analyte out that wasn't there in the first place. And then as far as the wastewater part goes, that's going to be a lot more straightforward because we don't have to worry as much about treating the sample, as there's not quite as much stuff in the way like the big long chains that were in the milk. And so that'll be a relatively simple process, after which we can run that through the HPLC as well. And so after all that's said and done, again, we should be able to have a decent idea of how much of these things, these common antibiotics and anti-inflammatories, that we can find in the stuff that we consume on a regular basis or interact with. So that's that.
Questions? Yes,
How
Karen?
do you liquefy beef?
It's, what you have to do is, I don't remember the acid off the top of my head.
What kind of beef is it?
It's just going to be, we're hoping just to use like hamburger beef, cheaper, we have a budget. But basically you take that, you put a little bit of acid and you blend it until it is, you have a nice meat smoothie there.
Yummy. I wonder if there's an organic farm you could get some from, where they claim to not have it.
That'd be interesting.
There's got to be one.
Around.
Yeah, I bet Diane Barris or Soren Hauge or somebody would know. I bet there's somebody that knows that's not too far away from us right now.
It's interesting, because I know on October 22nd, there was something in the Washington Post about how right now 80% of all antibiotics are fed to farm animals that are sold.